Get out and vote.
Mark your calendars. Early voting for the 2026 primary election runs July 20th through July 29th for St. Thomas and St. Croix, and July 23rd through July 29th on St. John. Voting hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. daily on St. Thomas and St. Croix, and 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily on St. John. Voting is easy, convenient, and transparent. Voters in the St. Thomas-St. John district may vote at either voting center. On St. Thomas, Voting Election Systems Office located at Lockhart Gardens above Banco Popular. On St. John, vote at the Election Systems Office located at the Marketplace, 3rd floor, Suite 2. On St. Croix, vote at the Election Systems Office located at Sunny Isle Shopping Center, Unit 26. Whether you vote early or on Election Day, your vote matters.
Get out and vote. Every vote
Brought to you by the election system of the Virgin Islands. Now remember, one vote makes a difference.
Greetings, Virgin Islanders. This is Tregenza Roach. We pay one of the highest electric rates in the country for some of the least reliable power. We are at a critical point. Senator Novelle Francis Jr. and I will change that. But before we restructure anything, we owe you the truth. A Roach Francis administration will back the legislature's call for a forensic audit of WAPA, so we know exactly what the source of the problem is and are efficient in the fix. Then we will bring in discipline and capital with hard enforceable targets. But let me be clear, no outside control board will run our utility. Virgin Islanders will. And just as with WAPA, we will ensure that with each rebuild facility, funds have been set aside for maintenance. We build it once and we keep it. That's what Serving with Purpose will do. Vote for Roach and Francis on August 1st.
Paid for by Roach Francis for Governor and Lieutenant Governor.
Greetings, Virgin Islanders. This is Tregenza Roach. The money to rebuild is here, but won't be forever. And when projects are delayed, costs climb. What we need now is leadership that delivers on time and efficiently without compromising accountability. Senator Novelle Francis and I will create a better system to oversee recovery projects, so everyone can see what's moving and what's falling behind. One that you and our partners in the legislature can trust. And we will always give our local businesses their fair shot and pay them on time, so more recovery dollars stay right here at home. The recovery isn't finished, but under Roach Francis administration, it will be. That's what Serving with Purpose will do. Vote for Roach and Francis on August 1st.
Paid for by Roach Francis for Governor and Lieutenant Governor.
Okay, and we're live, Lucky 13. We want to welcome Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach and Senator Novelle Francis here as our super guest this morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Peter. How are you doing?
Great.
Good morning, Peter.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
And we would just like for you to present yourselves to our listeners and share your future plans. Go ahead.
So first, thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning and to share with your audience. I wish everyone in the listening and viewing audiences a pleasant morning. Praise God, we're getting some rain today, which is great. Novelle and I, over the course of a year, discussed running for governor and lieutenant governor and talking about what were some of the agenda items that we would bring as new items reflecting our interests and our concerns. I spoke to him in a way that shared, you would be in a unique position to be the lieutenant governor to someone who has been a lieutenant governor, who would be a great resource to you, and who understands what serving in that position means. I think a lot of people, even those running for office, misapprehend the role of the lieutenant governor in the Virgin Islands. And speaking to him, we decided, and in fact, at various times when he was the Senate president, he had served as acting lieutenant governor. So that is important. And as for me, serving as the acting governor on numerous occasions. So you would have two persons in office who are thoroughly exposed to the functions of both offices of governor and lieutenant governor before even stepping into office. So a team that would hit the ground running. And I think when you look at the record of both of us, you find public service, in so many sectors. Novelle, having headed a department, one of the most critical departments in the government of the Virgin Islands. Myself being on the leadership team of the Department of Education for 8 years as its legal counsel, and also being the executive director of the Virgin Islands Board of Education. Novelle's work, his entrepreneurship as a small business owner, my work at the university and in private practice, as well, because up to when I became lieutenant governor, I think I probably had about half my years of service being in private practice, working in the private sector, as well as being intimately familiar with the public sector. And so we share a sense of totality in terms of the concerns, not only of government, but of those people who also struggle to make ends meet, who are either privately employed or who own their businesses. And so we also looked at our familiarity with the ongoing projects of government, wanting to complete some of the same projects that other teams are talking about, whether they be schools, hospitals, healthcare centers, but also imbuing leadership with our concerns about the elderly, as an example, and his special interest in law enforcement, the aptitude that he brings in that regard. You heard him suggest, as we have been on the campaign trail, about pooling the peace officers, and I think the governor issued an executive order ordering the same. The idea of taking peace officers who had the exact same training as PD personnel, but who are assigned to whether the ports or licensing and consumer affairs or legislature, and bringing them to bear with their skills under particular situation regarding crime and law enforcement. So I think you would find in us a very unique combination of individuals. We've worked together before in the legislature, and we have a tremendous amount of respect for one another, both with regard to, excuse me, a record for integrity and good character. And so that's kind of a short intro. Novelle will add, a few of his ideas and concerns.
Good morning. I want to take this opportunity once again to thank the community for their support over the years. This undertaking of being a lieutenant governor, running with Lieutenant Governor Tregenza Roach for governor and lieutenant governor, is not one that I take lightly. It's a grave and Herculean responsibility, and I made sure that there was much contemplation. I addressed all of the trepidation in regards to it, but I'm very resolute at this point, being able to have served this community 25 years in law enforcement, working my way up from cadet all the way to police commissioner. And one thing I've always done is that to create a level of hope in the community, whatever the burden may be at any given time, I want to carry that burden. I have the responsibility to carry that burden, but I always want to leave a sense of hope. This community really needs to carry that hope, and especially in a time where we have a lot of stress in our community, I think it's critical and very important that we're able to deliver some level of hope to this community. So, we want to carry the burden and really reassure this community that the task to be undertaken is one that we certainly have not taken lightly. We have had much discussion in respect to it. As Lieutenant Governor Roach have indicated, it's over a year that we've been having this conversation. I've been asked by many individuals to run for Lieutenant Governor, and I truly believe that I've said yes to Lieutenant Governor Roach because I believe that he possessed the integrity, character, to be able to be an individual that would lead from the front, to lead by example, and certainly someone that carries the same characteristics that I do in regards to this task and this responsibility moving forward. As you know, I'm a small business owner. I've spent the last 6 consistent term at the legislature, was elected was selected twice as Senate President by my colleagues. Again, that confidence in being able to provide the leadership of a committee. Once as Vice President, I'm currently the Chair of Budget Appropriations and Finance, and have a seat at the table in regards to looking at the government finances, the everyday number crunching that's required to be able to continue to move this government forward. I will continue to maintain that I believe as a central government that we're doing very good in terms of revenue collections and being able to get that. I think where the issue and concern often comes in, and I've shared this with my colleagues on a number of occasions, is where those semi-autonomous agencies then rely on the central government to be able to subsidize, bail them out, and assist them in that endeavor. And that's where the strain sometimes comes in, despite having the ability for these semi-autonomous agencies to make decision by a board, still rely on the central government to be able to support and assist them in that endeavor. And I'm talking about the waste management, for example, Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority, our hospitals. We still have a responsibility, despite them being a semi-autonomous agency, to be able to support them because it benefits or impact the community on the large spectrum. So that's where we continue to find our financial challenges a lot of time in being able to make that happen. Now, the payment to vendors, we, especially local vendors, where that money continue to circulate within the community. We have contractors that has to be paid in a timely fashion. We have individual, especially some of our young individuals we saw when they were working immediately after the hurricanes, that our crime levels went all the way down, almost to zero in terms of homicide, because individuals were working. They had an opportunity. A young man with a bright future would rarely take the dark path. They always want to be able to make ends meet. I believe that the trouble comes in when they're put in a position where they're forced to feed their family, to be able to take care of their children. It's no greater feeling for a human being, a father, when a child tug at you and say, "I'm hungry." It's just remarkable, and it makes an individual do the unordinary things when you have to look that child in the face and not be able to provide them for them. So, our commitment again, and when the Lieutenant Governor Roach and I discussed the opportunity of working, he didn't ask me for loyalty to him. He asked me for us to be able to work to improve the quality of life for Virgin Islanders, people that live here in the Virgin Islands, and call this place home. So that is the spirit that we work in. That is what we look forward to doing. We can't do it by ourselves. We don't have a magic wand. We can't do it by ourselves. Our challenges are many, but nonetheless, I think it's important that we're able to, provide some level of hope to this community, and that's where we come from, a spirit of hope and a spirit of character and integrity to always want to do the right thing on the behalf of all people here in the Virgin Islands. So thank you for that intro opportunity.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor, if given the opportunity to lead, what adjustments, what changes, because everything is not perfect, what adjustments you've pointed out has to be made in order to move forward and be successful?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that we have stressed as a campaign is being accountable. And when we talk about being accountable, the first thing that we look at is what are the projects that are currently being undertaken, and how do we ensure that they are brought in on time? How do we ensure that the resources that are available to us trickle down through the members of our community? And how do we ensure the integrity of the processes? We have been looking at the various sections of the government, things like the Inspector General's office, staffing that office so that there are regular reviews of issues in government, because right now that office needs additional staff. We've talked about, and we plan to utilize OMB in a way that is over the entire government in terms of looking at how they guide the fiscal officers in different parts of the government and how we standardize the review of federal grants to ensure timely use of the resources that are available to us. So one big part is making sure that the project's already underway. Because when we talk about, say, the hospitals, or when we talk about schools, these projects, well, you may not see them yet, they've already been awarded. And so ensuring that those contracts are followed, and so that we get the value and the benefit of what we're paying for, is a key thing on the list. Now, the Brian Roach administration has focused a lot on getting the resources, because from the hurricanes in 2017, from Governor Mapp first going to Congress to seek the first 8.7 billion, I think it was, when the estimates was was what it would take to rebuild the infrastructure. When the legislature sent a team to support Governor Mapp in his efforts and to meet with Congress people and advocate on behalf of the territory. And then the efforts of offices like the Office of Disaster Recovery, the efforts of our governor, Governor Bryan, to increase the pool of money. That has been a big focus of this administration. And now that the resources are available, then we must focus on the quality of life. How are we going to improve our workforce? You know, the free tuition at the university that I sponsored in the legislature and Novelle supported by voting for it is really a human resources piece, because in that bill is a requirement that offices like the VA Economic Development Authority, Department of Labor, the university itself get together and talk about what are the skill sets that are needed. The emphasis too has been placed, and we will continue to put an emphasis on vocational education. If you attended any of the night schools or the Raphael O. Wheatley Skills Center or the Career and Technical Education Center in St. Croix, this year you saw those numbers of people who are pursuing vocational, who were pursuing and were awarded certificates of completion, and who are now able to lead their own businesses in electrical, plumbing, carpentry, masonry, because we removed those fees, just as we did the tuition at the university, remove those fees so our people could be trained. We also have to look at how we're going to expand the workforce to meet the needs. And one of them, of course, is to look at the tens of thousands of Virgin Islanders who live on the U.S. mainland, and to look at work differently so that we can recruit some of those persons to come back, but we can also use remote working and virtual work environments that is a part of the new workspace. So looking at the workforce is a critical component. Looking at completing the projects is a critical component. And then we also have to then think about how do you attract people here? What are some of the impediments to bringing people back? And so home ownership is critical. And one of the things we want to continue is that program called VI Slice, which was begun in this administration and which allowed more than 70 persons to own their own home. And I personally attended some of those. So we had some ceremonies where people had signed the final document for their home, and you know, the smile that it brings to people's faces, the fulfillment that it brings. And we also want to work on the legislature passed, I think it was in 22. We now have created what is essentially a land trust at the office of Lieutenant Governor. And instead of just auctioning properties for non-payment of taxes, where, you know, in an auction, the property goes to the highest bidder. So we're now empowered to remove some of those properties from auction and to make them available to Virgin Islanders in the categories of first-time home buyer, veterans, disabled, seniors, rather than simply just putting them on the auction block. So we want to see that too, because part of people coming here and part of people wanting to stay here is involved with how do I improve my life? How do I get the opportunity to own a home? And then we also have to construct housing that is available to low and moderate income persons as well. So it's a whole series of items that we have prioritized. Of course, we have to address the utility. That is a big part of our program. And there are many indications that we are on a path to better outcomes. I said to people that there was only one whopper. And if you really paid attention, the reality of residents of St. Croix is different from that of St. Thomas St. John. St. Croix has less island-wide power outages. And one of the factors is that they have more than half of their peak demand is being supplied by solar. And we need to increase the solar in the St. Thomas St. John district because what it does is it allows the utility to switch over to that source and to maintain those diesel and propane units that we inherited and unfortunately still have to rely on with regard to power production. And one of the good things for me that indicate that there's some good pieces like the undergrounding that has already been done in our historic towns in Charlotte Amalia and Frederickstead and Christiansted, the replacement of the composite poles, is that the Secretary of Energy, actually the Assistant Secretary, Ms. Tregenza, who came probably about a month and a half ago, I toured the Whopper plant with her. And the conversation about states of emergency, et cetera, et cetera. Her feedback to us was, you are going to have to do it. We will help you with the supply and of resources, but we're not coming here to take over your power plant. And similar things have happened in Puerto Rico, where they're making some traction as well. Well, one of the things that people have to remember, we are always wanting to compare our place with other places. And I give people the example of when I lived in Connecticut. It's the longest place I've lived outside of the Virgin Islands. We had one power outage in 4 years. But when I thought about it, I had to resist the urge to compare it to St. Thomas and St. John and St. Croix. We're an island. We can't send power to St. Croix, right? We barely managed to send power to St. John. But Connecticut is a part of a grid. It's a part of the North American grid. So power is in Canada, power is in the Western US, power is being produced so that they can switch over into other streams of supply that we can only do if we create a grid that has multiple sources and especially renewable sources like the sun, like wind, etc. So we want to focus on that. We also we've called in our thing to get this forensic audit of WAPA because we also want to ensure that the money is being utilized to not just fund, administrative costs or salaries, etc., but salaries that are the people who actually are out there on the polls and cutting bush and so forth. That we need to ensure that there's a balance between those needs and to operate more effectively and more efficiently. So those are some of the major kinds of items on our list, and Novelle, I think, wants to share as well on that comment.
I think additionally, we want to start to take a look at those big agencies that's responsible for bringing the revenues into the coffers of the government of the Virgin Islands. So we want to create an office of government accountability to make sure that we're doing everything possible to collect the funding that's due to the government of the Virgin Islands. So we want an office of collections as well that could be able to work towards in a consolidated area, certainly properly staffed and everything else that could be able to work in terms of collection, providing for payment plans, because we know sometimes this is a heavy lift, and try to work with those individuals that may be unable to make their payments in a timely fashion, to really work with them to make sure that they're making their payments. But it's important that we're able to collect on those areas because, of course, it impacts other services, income tax refund in a timely fashion. It impacts vendors being paid. It impacts the the supplies to our hospital. So we want to ensure that we're addressing those fundamentals that would allow for the revenues to continue to flow in a timely fashion so that government could somewhat work in real time and be able to address our responsibilities in respect to training up our young people to be able to undertake the skill set that'll be required for this. We also want to even in the instances where they're looking at home ownership, that we want to create financial literacy in our schools. A lot of times we have challenges where individuals are hard pressed to be able to qualify for loans because of credit scores, because of the inability to save in a timely fashion to be able to meet the needs of what's required for home ownership. So we want to make sure that that's being done in our school levels. I think that those are some of the other areas outside of what the Lieutenant Governor have already indicated that we want to look at in being able to ensure that we put in place, so that government can really work in real time and be accountable to the people of the Virgin Islands.
I have a question, Senator Francis. As a former police commissioner, there's a rise in crime. Our young people, gun crimes. What adjustments again we need to make to try to save our children?
Absolutely. We have a few bandits that's really taking over the streets and just wreaking havoc on our community. So first of all, we have to take the fight to them. We have to stabilize that criminal element. And the suggestion that I've made was really to just pool all of our peace officers. When you look at the number of police officers that we have, which has really declined over the years from when I was there. I've been gone from the police department almost 13 years, but our numbers have seriously declined and decreased over that period of time. So we want to make sure that we're able to support our law enforcement by pooling our resources together by all peace officers. We have hundreds of peace officers outside of the Virgin Islands Police Department. I think the last count I got, when we look at all of the peace officers and police officers, we have 531 officers that's trained as peace officers currently that we could pool and really activate. So for a period of time, we want to be able to deploy these individuals, give them over to the chief of police, the police commissioner, for deployment to be able to attack the criminal element that we're seeing. We also have to continue to invest in our crime prevention programs. We have to be able to stop the crime before it occurs. We have to definitely go back to the basic, making sure that we're park, walk, and talk, making sure that we're able to do our community-oriented policing, make sure that we're initiating traffic stop. If an individual feel that while driving, that they're going to be stopped by the police officers, they will leave their weapons at home. If they leave their weapon at home, those are crime of opportunities that then minimize. We also have to ensure that we're working with our federal partners. I had a very good working relationship with the federal government, the FBI. We created a task force. We had an anti-corruption task force. We had the HIDA task force, where we were able to really protect our borders. We have open borders that we see where a lot of our firearms are coming through our open borders. We don't have that jurisdiction responsibility, but we have to work with our federal partners to make sure that we're holding their feet to the fire to ensure that we're protecting our borders, our Coast Guard, our U.S. Customs, our Customs and Immigration. Those are the individuals that's ATF. Those are the individuals that are really tasked with this responsibility, and we need to ensure that they're carrying that out. So we do have a plan in respect to addressing this crime situation, but we can't allow these few bandits that wreaking havoc in our community to continue to exist and thrive.
Question: How do we take advantage of the young people that's locked up? And you stated earlier that some young people are forced to help feed family, children, and that type of stuff, so they do any kind of craziness. That don't mean they're bad. How do we save them? And I had a suggestion. It's like what drives me kind of crazy is when we have a youngster commit a crime, whether it's a gun crime. It's like I say, hey, our youths will get dressed up, sharp up to go. I go in jail today or no? Because they have a gun. They have they tilted the stuff that they say don't do because you don't get locked up. They do it. So it's like, hey, call your mother and father, tell them, look, I go in jail today. Don't look for me, though. You understand what I'm saying? But the thing is, the workforce. again, my thing is a 4-year sentence to a 16, 17-year-old is a college education. You understand? What? And I've seen that the jail system we have here, we're producing kind of man. All they do in jail is sit down. So when they come out here, they're comfortable sitting down in the corner. Versus, guess what? You have a child, we're gonna give you some work to help. Half of the money go to pay child support. You understand what I'm saying? But by the time you put in 4 or 5 years of working in some industry that you could bring into the jailhouse, you understand? Again, the person change. You understand what I'm saying? Because behaviors are learned,
Yeah.
but we have to. You just can't have people sitting down. So my thing is, where do you get the instead of bringing in people, we have people here that ain't doing nothing.
Yeah.
But if we force them to be responsible, I think that also could work. Versus that, hey, you're gonna sit down for 5 years and you still come out, no therapy, no skills. Come on.
Well, I think you make a good point, Peter. I think we have to shift our thinking to really make incarceration a period of rehabilitation as well. And I don't know that we've put enough emphasis on doing that. And we do have some success stories. I mean, I've spoken to persons who've come out of prisons who have a skill, when they come out. There's also the possibility of remote work if we want to include new strategies. We could have that as well, and like you say, have a person contributing to the work of the society. When we were discussing the free tuition bill, and people would ask, how are we going to pay for it? My response to them was, well, you never ever ask, how do we pay for the people who are in prison? At the time that the free tuition bill was being discussed, do you know what it cost to attend the university for a year? $7,000 a year, $3,500 a semester. In contrast, you could spend $46,000 to $50,000 keeping a person in jail. And I say to them all the time, we don't budget for it. We don't stop when a crime is committed and we don't say, oh no, we don't have $50,000 to put a person in jail. We just put them in jail. No matter how many crimes occur, we're ready to expend the resources that way. It's a thing we don't really think about because nobody talks about this cost, that cost of incarceration. It's a big one compared to what you could do with those resources in the society. So I think you're absolutely correct, and we really should look at how do we rehabilitate and how do we create opportunities that there's nothing preventing a person from working in prison. And if we could fix the remote part, that's a great avenue to start.
And one more thing, right? For those youths who ain't graduate, the sentence should be graduation.
That too.
We're bringing in these teachers. You ain't got to go nowhere.
That too.
And you could waste as much time as you want.
That too. But I also want to share a thought. And, I say it often and people repeat it to me, and I hope other people think about it. We all have a responsibility for the society that we want to live in. We all have a responsibility to do that. Novelle and I, we've decided that we're going to contribute our work to public service, to making life better for our people. It's the same way that whenever we attend the police graduations, as an example, and we speak to the new officers, and, we tell them, you're going to go out into a society where people are going to be rebuking you for stopping them when they run a red light, or stopping them when they don't stop at a stop sign. Or we still have a law about talking on your cell phone with you, holding it to your head when you're in a car, etc. So people say, don't study that. Go after the real criminals, Don't study we should be able to choose which one of the laws we break, but those people over there who sitting on the side of the road, they're the criminals, right? And so you have a responsibility. If you want to live in a law-abiding society, you have to do it too. Whatever you think is the worst crime or the lesser crime, if you break the law, as we're talking about in so many instances, then you have contributed to making a kind of lawless place. And we don't want to live in a lawless place. So the responsibility is on each of us. And the responsibility to young people is not just people who are in public office have a responsibility to young people. You have a responsibility to, if a young person is around you, to help them, to help to nurture them, to help to share your knowledge with them, to help to share your wisdom with them, so that their reality becomes different. All of us have a work to do with regard to how we approach them.
And as a result of that, we have really worked in terms of improving apprenticeship programs, internship, and I have been a strong advocate for always allowing that to thrive. But more importantly, when we look at that transition that we see occur a lot of times, and that's why it's so important, where we grew up in this community, we understand what the needs are and where some of these problem areas need to be addressed. I've always been a strong advocate for breaking the school to prison pipeline, where we see that youngsters, you get involved in some minor infraction, and we ready to send them into the criminal justice system. We need restorative justice within the school system, will allow them to remain in that element versus going into the criminal justice system, because when they get in there, they just spiral out of control. You go in there and they're housed with other criminals, hardcore criminals, that makes them worse rather than improving them. So we want to make sure that we're breaking the school to prison pipeline. We have also allowed for pre-cadets to go back into the school. That's where I started. Getting that type of fundamentals at an early age, because any one of us could have been subjected to that criminal element as well. But we had good mentorship, individuals that was there. A lot of that came from the school and our pre-cadet program. We have done a lot in terms of second chance programs, bond in the box, making sure that we create avenues to allow for individuals that were sometimes or impacted by being in prison, when they come out, is that they're not placed right back into the same element, the same place that got them into prison in the first place. So we want to create second chance program for them. I've written many letters to be able to get them to get a fisherman's license or a DLCA license to be able to do landscaping, car washing, whatever that they could start to at least hone their entrepreneurship. But we want to be able to empower them in that area. It's very important, and I see a lot of improvement in regards to individuals within our prison right now, where they're coming out at least with some level of rehabilitation and preparation for re-entry into our community. Our recidivism rate has decreased significantly. Going back years ago, we had almost 60 to 70% of individuals that were prone to recommit crimes. Now we're seeing that has declined significantly because of the rehabilitation and the reentry that's done in our prison elements. So we want to continue to foster that type of training and experience within our prison environment, so that those individuals could be able to come out and make better citizens in our community. But the most important thing is to make sure that we're preventing the crime from occurring in the first place, right? So they don't need that, that they'll be able to live and work in this community by being able to have a skill set to meet the needs. As well as you talk about bringing in individuals, it's my hope that we want to create an environment where we're talking about bringing in 4,000, 5,000 individuals, which means that every single person that wants a job, and I must underscore, those individuals that want a job will be able to have a job here before we could talk about bringing in additional individuals for our workforce.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about the challenges, Lieutenant Governor, recruiting nurses and teachers.
That's a very important topic, and we face a national teacher shortage. We face a national shortage of nurses, right? So this is not a Virgin Islands issue. Some of the positive things are the fact that we have a school of nursing at our university that gives up to the bachelor's degree in nursing. I've gone to their pinning ceremonies, and those numbers are increasing year after year. We also have the LPN, the Licensed Practical Nurse certification that we do at Wheatley Skills and at Career and Technical Education. So we're growing our own population with regard to nursing. And the free tuition at our university certainly helps that. The the fact that in our the other side of it, the teachers that you ask about, if you look at over the years, if you've attended the graduations at our university, you would see that the numbers of people going into education are lesser and lesser each year. I think when I observed the graduation on St. Croix, UVI, there might have been 4 persons in education. That used to be like an entire marching squad once upon a time. So we're doing academies in the schools that are geared at supporting a teacher education, making it introducing it to students as a viable career option. And we have also made adjustments to teacher salaries, I think maybe about 3 times during the course of this administration. So that's an important one. So we do have to grow the pool because less and less persons are interested in going to education. You know, we come from a time where teachers had power. You know, if the teacher sent for your parents might come and beat you with a belt in front of the class or something like that. Now we have you put up your hand. Okay, now you have now you have the parents who want to beat up the teacher. You know, for just doing their job. So the social paradigms have shifted. You know, as well, and we need to support our educators in school. One of the pieces of our platform too is paying special attention to early childhood, but also to what is called adult learning. Because the studies show that where parents or guardians are able to support the work of the teacher, the work of the school, you have better outcomes with children. So with students. So that is a big piece of it as well. Making sure we used to have a parent university, and it may extend to making sure that homes have free access to internet, that every student, a parent has an access to a tablet or some kind of a computer where we can take advantage of virtual instruction. We can have experts that present on certain topics, and parents are able to tune in and to get that. So there are many ways to think about it, and one of the pieces that I think that needs to be strengthened is the connection of our university to our Head Start to 12th grade program. The last program that I worked in at the university was something we call, and I helped to structure it, was something called Junior University. And we identified there was about 50 young boys who were in the 7th grade, and they were in danger of repeating the 7th grade. So we pulled them out for a program, and we had 4 subjects: reading, writing, mathematics, and a course called Brainology. And the course in Brainology was designed to teach them that their brain is still developing, although they feel there's a big man already, that their brain is still developing, and nutrition and exercise and rest, all of that, those things are important to brain health. And by the time we were finished, I made them one promise. I said to them on the first day, I said, I make you one promise. On the last day of this program, you're not going to want it to end. That's my one promise to you. And so those kinds of things where the university becomes included in making better outcomes for students, this is something that we envision as well that will contribute to the teacher paradigm. And I think one of the pieces that I talked about when I was the government representative, when we negotiated with the teachers' unions, when I worked at the Department of Education. And one of the things that I said we should also feature are sabbaticals for teachers. Somehow find a way for teachers to have sabbaticals of a year or a semester, so that a person doesn't come into a classroom and work for 30 years. There has to be burnout. There has to be ways that we can support the teachers and the administrators. And we just intend to make these concerns a real part of our change to government when we become when we're elected.
And along that line too, recruitment and retention is extremely important. We want to make sure that we're having conversation, even on exit interviews with those individuals that are slated to leave, to understand the nuances that may be involved in terms of the decision to relocate or to go elsewhere, and be able to close that gap. We know a lot of it sometimes is housing, the ability to be able to get a house. The salary becomes an issue in respect to career advancement, child care. There's a lot of complexities that's involved in a decision to relocate, and we want to understand what those difficulties may be, and how do we come to an amicable resolution to at least meet them halfway. I don't believe that we should just accept a resignation or retirement at any given time without some discussion about how we could continue to retain those individuals within our workforce. At the end of the day, if the decision is final, that's accepted, but we should work with them to see how we could be able to bridge or meet them halfway. And we have done a lot of that. We subsidize insurance a lot of time, not to pass that cost on to our employees. As a legislative body, we've made sure that, and as a government, we provide the additional we eat the cost of the increase so that that's not passed on. In our government employees retirement system, the lion's share is paid by the government of the Virgin Islands. We make sure that we're providing some subsidies to allow for gap financing in instances where there may be some housing through the SLICE program, or even low income, medium income subsidies. So we try to meet them halfway in that respect. But a lot of these professions, these civil service professions, are really dying professions. We've seen it since the post-pandemic, where people are really kind of moving away from those traditional ways, and even instances where we could perhaps allow for some level of distant learning or automation, flex time. All of those things are taken into contemplation so that we could strongly encourage our employees to remain here, because there's no place like living here in the Virgin Islands.
That is so true. We want to thank you, gentlemen, but you got 10 minutes. You could just say some closing statements again about what you're all about and what you would like our listeners to do coming up on the 1st.
We have a lot of discussions. I mean, certainly we've been out on the campaign trail and having this discussion. The unfortunate thing about us is that we still have to work. Right, we're employed. The lieutenant governor still have to punch the clock and do his work. I too am involved in legislative here. I'm the chair of budget, appropriations, and finance. So where others might be able to work 24/7 to be on the campaign trail, we have to continue to perform our paid duties here on the behalf of the people of the Virgin Islands. We didn't talk a lot about healthcare today, but we do have within our platform a discussion regarding healthcare, elderly health, behavioral health. I've been a strong advocate for behavioral health over the years. We have provided the funding to make that happen. I continue to be in dispute with the governor where we need to build a Taj Mahal $250 million facility. I think that we need something actually, for a 5-7 day in-house facility that we could stabilize anyone that may be going through this behavioral health issue, and then work with them. We're contemplating as well building tiny homes and having some facilities made available for the homeless within our community. But we can't continue. We're talking about individuals that have served as our teachers, our nurses, our veterans. We can't continue to just see them go over on that dark side and not provide some type of support and a system on their behalf. So we're in the early voting phase. I'm asking individuals that want to go out there and consider the fact that the Roach Francis team is very much poised, prepared, and have the experience to lead this government and moving forward. And ask them to consider voting for number 1 on the primary ballot, Roach Francis. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would really just close by first thanking the people of the Virgin Islands for having elected us time and time again to serve in the Senate and to have me serve as your lieutenant governor for 2 terms, right? And one of the things that Novelle and I have spoken about, having worked together in the 31st and the 32nd legislatures, is reducing the opportunities for or increasing the opportunities for a harmonious relationship with the legislature and decreasing the antagonism that sometimes exists in those relationships. We know what the role of the legislature is. We respect the role of the legislature, and we believe that we, in knowing many of the players, can offer a more harmonious approach to dealing with addressing our issues. We are, Novelle pointed out, we're on the job still, even though there is time that we make for undertaking this campaign. But it's a further demonstration that we are prepared on day one to sit in these offices to play these roles. It's very easy to sit in a seat and say, everybody, this is failing, that is failing, blah, blah, blah. But we are the ones in the actual seats. We've seen the resources come in. We see the need to nurture them and to ensure that they're used in as an accountable way as possible. We live here. We go through the power outages. We are affected by the high prices of goods and services, just as any person out there. And so the problems are as real to us as they are to you. And we made one pledge between us, and that is, how through our good work do we make the lives of people in the Virgin Islands better? And that's what we want to work towards. And we ask you to give us the opportunity to continue in public service and to integrate our ideas about how life could be better. I think the statistics show that 11,000 people turn 65 in the US on a daily basis, and we know we have an aging population. So certainly one of the things we also want to do is find ways to support our elders and the caregivers of our elders. A person can burn themselves out and they too can be sick, taking care of another person. So those opportunities to create facilities, which are important, but also there are those families who want to care for their loved ones in their home. How do we support that? And we also want to be revolutionary in our ideas. If we talk about our population declining, and if we talk about growing our population, maybe the ways where we need to find to support young families who are having children, to encourage them to have children, and somehow to support them, in doing that, because we know what the cost of raising a child is. How do we as a society, just as we said, let's provide free tuition. If we want more people in the society, how do we encourage young people to say, have children? All of these are ideas that we are prepared to look at our world differently. I had a conversation with someone who worked in human services, and she said, I don't want no job when you get in, I need to figure out a way to work with you, but I don't want a job. I said, well, perhaps you're thinking about your a job in just a traditional way. The UK created a ministry of loneliness because they recognized that there were so many people living alone who had no human contact with anybody else. This is what we need to do. Are the structures the ones that serve the time, or is there more?
And before I let you go, just to, when you talk about elderly people being lonely, what about our children who can't communicate because they're always on the phones?
Yeah.
They can't speak.
Yeah.
Can't explain anything.
That's important.
Yes.
And we really want to close because we don't want to not touch a subject, the HUD subject that is in the news. We want to just assure the listening audience that this is a present time problem. This is not a problem for an administration coming in November. This is something that we have to address right now. The Virgin Islands Housing Finance Authority has already registered with the HUD their intention to appeal the finding. The governor is already contemplating traveling to Washington to work through this, and this is not an opportunity to conduct ourselves in a way to jeopardize any other funding that is available to us. And it's a time for all hands on deck, including the delegate who have a job too, just like we have ours. to work together and to have the situation addressed. So we just wanted to close by letting the public know that structures and responses already being prepared to address the issue now. This isn't something to talk about when you get in office, blah, 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 November. This is today, and we pledge to work with the legislature, the administration, and everybody to have this issue addressed.
We want to thank you for your presentation today.
Thank
and guess
you.
what? Come again.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Lucky 13, WSTA, St. Thomas.
Greetings, Virgin Islanders. This is Tregenza Roach. We pay one of the highest electric rates in the country for some of the least reliable power. We are at a critical point. Senator Novelle Francis Jr. and I will change that. But before we restructure anything, we owe you the truth. A Roach Francis administration will back the legislature's call for a forensic audit of WAPA, so we know exactly what the source of the problem is and are efficient in the fix. Then we will bring in discipline and capital with hard enforceable targets. But let me be clear, no outside control board will run our utility. Virgin Islanders will. And just as with WAPA, we will ensure that with each rebuilt facility, funds have been set aside for maintenance. We build it once and we keep it. That's what Serving with Purpose will do. Vote for Roach and Francis on August 1st.
Paid.
Greetings, Virgin Islanders. This is Tregenza Roach. The money to rebuild is here, but won't be forever. And when projects are delayed, costs climb. What we need now is leadership that delivers on time and efficiently without compromising accountability. Senator Novelle Francis and I will create a better system to oversee recovery projects, so everyone can see what's moving and what's falling behind. One that you and our partners in the legislature can trust. And we will always give our local businesses their fair shot and pay them on time, so more recovery dollars stay right here at home. The recovery isn't finished, but under Roach Francis administration, it will be. That's what Serving with Purpose will do. Vote for Roach and Francis on August 1st.
Paid for by Roach Francis for Governor and Lieutenant Governor.
Your station for the most fun
all summer long.
The People Station, WSTA.